So recently, well, actually quite a while ago, I've been tasked to implement a simple version of Conway's Game of Life in C. If you don't know what Conway's Game of Life is, it's basically an infinite grid on which you have living cells and dead cells, and certain rules under which a living cell dies or a dead cell becomes alive. The rules are: every cell with exactly 3 living neighbors becomes a living cell, every cell with more than 3 neighbors dies, and every cell with less than 2 neighbors dies as well. Also, Conway's Game of Life is Turing complete, which basically means that you can do anything with it which you could do with any other programming language. I kind of wanted to experiment with that and maybe make some sort of animation or particle system or game in it, but I didn't really have a good editor for it, and I thought, why not make my own? I mean, they probably already exist, but I'll just make my own. So as I was saying, I had to implement this in C, which was pretty straightforward. I rendered it to bitmaps and converted them to a GIF. The task was done, I experimented a little bit with a friend, and I kind of wanted to expand this. This time I moved away from C and started developing in Java. I quickly implemented an infinite grid space with the ability to place cells. I won't go in the details of the rendering. I'm using the code draw library to draw things, and I store the living cell positions in an array list to draw them. And I store the camera offset to offset the things I'm drawing. For the step calculation, I have a hash map containing a cell position as a key and an integer as value. Then I iterate through my living cells, look up the neighboring cells in the hash map and increase their value by 1. Then I iterate through that hash map, checking each neighbor count while also checking if the cell is already alive. Then I calculate whether it should still be alive or not. Using hash maps, this can all be done pretty fast, although it takes a bit more memory. With that, the basic game was done. I added the ability to save all living cells, to load them, even to load them into templates. That was all quite nice, but I wanted it to be user-friendly. I mean, for now everything was controlled with the keyboard, which I do like, but for future features it would not really be enough. So I started writing my own UI system. At this point it was still pretty terrible, but it got the job done. I also added lifetime to my living cells, which basically stores the time the cell is alive. With this I could color cells differently depending on their lifetime, which made it look a lot better. Also, I had way too much fun experimenting with this, as you can see in following clips. It looks so amazing. Yeah, and then it kind of settles, but it doesn't stop like this, because first of all the color still has to change from the stable things on the outside, and it's still going. And if you wait a little longer, you can see a really beautiful thing up here. Doesn't this look amazing? I had way too much fun with this. Like, this looks so cool. Okay, so this grid is stable. That runs at a few FPS, which is fine. As you can see, it changes the color. Also, another really interesting thing is, if you click here, nothing happens, but the color changes. Because it... oh yeah, and I misclicked. But I wanted to show you how it looks when I misclick. Look at this. But what I wanted to say previously, when you click exactly in the center of 4 squares, it basically does nothing, but actually it does not nothing. It takes 2 steps. One is it deletes the corners and the centerpiece in the middle, and the second step is it adds the corners again. And also this here is so beautiful. You could look at this for hours. And it runs so smooth, like it's 6,000 cells and it still runs at 60 steps per second. And I experimented with different coloring modes. Here, for example, I applied the gradient on all cells. It's gradient, basically a sine gradient for each of the colors too. Like when we start play. I mean, it looks just amazing. Furthermore, I added a select mode which allows you to select cells and save them as a file or template, allowing you to easily reuse structures. Even though my UI system just had buttons and sliders so far, I was pretty happy with it. UI elements inherit from an abstract UI element class, which contains methods to render the element, to check if the mouse cursor is over the element, and so on. This basically allowed me to throw a bunch of UI elements into an array list, iterate through it, and it basically just works. Every button also contains a functional interface, which is similar to actions in C# or function pointers in C. This allowed me to just call a click function on each button without really knowing what happens. For the slider I did something similar, but the functional interface of the slider is executed with a float value as parameter, indicating the completion of the slider. If you click on the slider, it automatically calculates the fill value and executes the functional interface with that specific value. Like this, when creating a slider, you can write a lambda expression, taking in that parameter and doing whatever you want with it, allowing me to easily add as many sliders as I want. I think this is pretty neat and I enjoy how easily this can be done in Java. I kind of want to implement sliders like this in my C game project thingy. I know it should be possible with function pointers, but I think it might be a little more complicated. I also added a screenshot button, which takes a screenshot of the entire world as a PNG. Well, not the entire world, it takes a screenshot of the smallest possible area containing all living cells, including colors. And I added an auto screenshot toggle, which takes a screenshot after every step. That's especially useful if I want to simulate something huge over the night or something and don't want to record something with 30 FPS, which only runs at 2 FPS. And PNGs don't even take up that much storage. So I had buttons now, but I had no proper way to align them, all manually so far. So I decided to add HBoxes and VBoxes. I initially thought it's easy to add them, but it was actually quite challenging to implement them the way I wanted them to be. Basically, I wanted each alignment box to have a minimal size, spacing and margin. I wanted to be able to add elements, then align the elements inside the box, then scale the box to fit the elements. With one box that's pretty simple. With boxes in boxes it was more difficult though. I tried a bunch of different ways to get it done the way I wanted, and in the end I realized that I've been using wrong position values the whole time, so probably most things would have worked. Anyway, my current solution is I silently, without aligning and rescaling, add elements to the box and then adjust starting from the parent element. The parent element iterates through its child elements, takes the first one, aligns it. If that element is an alignment box itself, it tells the box to align its children. Once the lowest box, the box containing no other boxes, aligned its children, that box adjusts its size, then the upper box can take that size to calculate where the next element should be. After that box aligned all its children, it adjusts its size, and so on until everything is adjusted. Having implemented those alignment boxes, I made a grid for a better template selector. The template selector generates a button for each currently loaded template, shows a preview. I'm not going to tell you how that works, the code is pretty terrible and not reusable at all, allowing you to easily choose what to place. Then I also improved some UI rendering, which means I rounded the UI element corners and gave everything an outline. I also implemented a toggle UI element, which is basically the same as the button, but it calls the functional interface with a boolean value, depending if it's toggled or not. And that's basically it for this devlog. I still have some things planned for this editor. I want to improve it visually, add some more quality of life features, maybe improve performance again, and so on. If you have any cool feature ideas, let me know about them in the comments. If you want to use this editor or something, I could probably publish the repository on GitHub or something. I definitely want to make it look a little better though and add some more quality of life features before that. I'll keep you up to date. And I will continue developing my Unity games at some point. I just wasted too much time on this, and so I thought I could just make some devlog about this instead.